Well, welcome again. We will hop right into the big items up front. So, two big items. First, BIP 48, which is whitelisting and migrating to the bean wrap Steve well. Should say migrating the unripe liquidity, including the implementation of multi-flow version 1.1. So that BIP passed and has been deployed, and then really just earlier today, BIP 49, which is the miscellaneous improvements package, also passed and is currently being deployed. And then the last major item, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit more later on, Beanstalk 3 is still in remediation. Somebody's off mute and they're opening cupboards and stuff, maybe? There we go. Okay, hopping down into projects and initiatives. Really very little change since last meeting when it comes to the funnels. The only shift or the only change from last time was so we had L2 migration, and we may have a little bit more information about that a little bit later on, and that potentially being included in Beanstalk 3 in that package. Other than that, no changes to the funnel charts, which takes us right to Beanstalk 3. So for those of you who look at the info decks, any of the projects and initiatives that are completed, I put them down in the appendix just so we've got the record in the info deck. So we've taken the wrap Steve BIP as well as multi-flow version 1.1 and the miscellaneous improvements and put them all down into the appendix so you can find them there. But really, when it comes to ongoing items, Beanstalk 3 is the major initiative. And again, this is a pretty familiar group of upgrades and projects. We've talked about a lot of these at quite a bit of length, and I know there's quite a bit of information in the Discord. I guess what I will say at this point is, like I said, we're still in remediation with CodeHawk. I will open it up quickly to the team to see if there's anything additional they want to talk through or bring up about Beanstalk 3 and kind of this ongoing process. All right, hearing nothing, we'll hop right down into. So we've got Subgraph UI and other updates. Talking to some of the devs in other chats, I think there were some items like soil. I think you kind of mentioned some just kind of general items that you wanted to cover. I mean, I don't know if you want to walk through anything real quick. I'll open up the floor to you or to Sweet Red.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't have anything like specific to share, I guess, on the subgraph. I mean, just been spending kind of a fair amount of time on the subgraph and on the various Discord bots, just some miscellaneous improvements to those. I guess one thing people may or may not have noticed on the seasons bot, we did add a display for like when the seeds change each season, like as the seed gauge, does its thing. At this point, it's not really noticeable because the gauge points have already, kind of reached the maximum ratio. So that's not like really changing at the moment, but I think that's something that will be pretty neat, potentially in the future as the LP allocations are, balanced or such that the seeds are going to shift each season. But yeah, other than that, I mean, nothing too specific to share. Yeah, happy to say more if anyone has a specific question. Oh, okay, I see a question from Nasjack. What's up with the TWA on the website? Not sure which one you're referring to, actually.
So I see Nasjack's off mute.
Are you talking about the...
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe a week ago, I posted something where it said the time-weighted average says it's like minus 500K, but the instantaneous is minus 2.7 mil right now. So I was just wondering what the discrepancy is.
Yeah.
No pressure, because I know you got a lot on your plate, but you mentioned it.
Yeah, I can answer that, actually. So yeah, I know. Apologies. I know you posted about that. I do remember seeing your message about that a week ago. So just for everyone who's not familiar, Nasdaq's question is in reference to on the main Bean website in the Bean price dropdown at the top left where it shows the delta B and the liquidity. There's this toggle that can switch between showing the instantaneous like delta B and the time weighted delta B. And so the time weighted is only showing the negative 500K because it's capped as a percentage of the bean supply. So the bean supply right now is that 50.4 million beans, and therefore the TWA is capped to be a maximum of 1% of the bean supply in each pool. So it's already hit that maximum amount within the Bean Wraps ETH pool. So that's why it's at that, exactly 10% of the bean supply. And then the Bean ETH one is less than that. So, that's right now it's about minus 20,000. So the total TWA that's used with respect to peg maintenance for issuing soil will be according to the sum of those that's shown. But I mean, I definitely agree that it could be clearer, like how it shows that on the UI, but that's why the values are like that. And those are the values that the contracts are actually using.
Thank you. Love the work. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like that's a little confusing, honestly. I'd be kind of inclined to show the time-weighted average without respect for that cap, but maybe we can think on that.
All right, thanks, Soil. So I see Sweet Red on and a handful of other folks from that are currently helping out with development. Sweet Red, anything you want to cover in terms of UI or?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to share. So I spent some time working on a new silo detail page that hopefully will make it a little bit clearer in terms of what assets you have deposited and how much stock and seed are associated with those. And then in addition to that, added flows for lambda to lambda converts and anti lambda to converts. And so hopefully in the silo page, you'll be able to update the BDV of your deposits and also do the same for other people's deposits that have a lot of stock or are credited with a lot of stock and seed that is higher than the current price. And then I built a flow for Gen Flood, which I don't expect will be used anytime soon, but that UI is now there, and for Gen Convert. And so, yeah, those are some updates coming to the Silo UI in the near term.
Thank you, Sweet Red. Appreciate it. Well, we'll take the opportunity to kind of open up the floor a little bit. Obviously, there's a lot going on outside of Beanstalk, but just wanted to give the community a minute if there are any specific questions for the contributors or anyone for the DAO. The floor is yours. We'll open it up and take any questions you have.
You might have covered this in the beginning, but I posted in the chat. What's the plan for after Beanstalk 3? What's kind of next on the plate?
In the chat at the moment.
Can you guys hear me? I could hear NASDAQ, but I don't know if Rex could hear NASDAQ.
Good question. So I think once Beanstalk 3 is settled and managed, I guess it's unclear at the moment as to what I can, but I'm sorry, Guy, I couldn't. It's just not updating very quickly. Go ahead, Guy.
Sorry, I heard people talking over each other. Maybe it's just my connection. I didn't have anything to add per se. I mean, I think it's pretty exciting that Beanstalk 3 encapsulates a lot of the RFCs we published at the beginning of the year, which covers a lot of what was on the 2024 budget. After that, I think the plan, blacklist mitigation for as one example is not included in Beanstalk 3 at the moment. I think that in the long term, that'll be very helpful to have as part of Beanstalk. Just as a reminder, blacklist mitigation being the one where if there's a bean USDC well, for example, and Circle is to blacklist that well, that those beans in the well are immediately, excluded from the bean supply. So the bean supply would just scale down rather than allowing anyone to withdraw the liquidity one-sided and dump the beans elsewhere. After that, it's been a long time coming over the course of couple years since the governance exploit, but definitely doing some thinking and design around some sort of governance solution, given that the current arrangement off-chain on Snapshot is certainly not optimal for multiple axes. So those are a couple things that are top of mind, at least personally.
I think the question is basically, does Beanstalk 3 include immutability? And maybe I'm interpreting that comment wrong. And if so, definitely let me know. But the answer to that is no. There is no part of Beanstalk 3, at least that I'm aware of, that would include immutability for the protocol.
Yeah, for me, it's very hard to imagine making Beanstalk totally immutable anytime soon, just even with respect to bug fixes, for example. It's just hard to imagine what that would look like, or rather hard to imagine that going well.
Any other questions or comments from the DAO? All right, Mix had a follow-up question regarding L2. Any comment from the dev group about possibility of L2 movement or its inclusion in Beanstalk 3?
That's the current working assumption for Beanstalk 3. I think that, still TBD, on the L2 of choice. Unclear, if people think that, a temp check kind of vote is in order for something like that. But yeah, some sort of L2 migration is currently planned to be part of Beanstalk 3. There are some things that sort of assume the move to an L2. For example, one of the problems that we've had in the UI up to this point is, every once in a while you'll see someone posting in the Discord where, they're unable to load their balances, for example. And, when Beanstalk was written initially, it was very heavily optimized for gas costs on mainnet. And as a result, the UI leans heavily on things, technology like the subgraph, for example, to load balances, load different data, at least in some ways. And in other ways, what happens when you load the UI is it'll try to parse all the events emitted by Beanstalk since deployment to, stitch together your balances, for example, your plots, deposits, etc. And that results in hammering RPCs with potentially thousands of requests, which results in timeouts, rate limits, etc. that result in people being unable to load their balances. So one of the things that becomes possible in a move to an L2 is inherently a lot less concern around gas costs. So one of the things that we intend to ship as part of this L2 migration, if it is to be approved by the DAO, of course, is to update a lot of the storage architecture within Beanstalk to allow the addition of new view functions that will allow the UI to easily fetch a user's balances, whether it's deposits, plots, etc. So hopefully that change in particular will result in a much better UX from the perspective of people being able to use the UI properly and see their balances. Mixolitidian says, is it not possible to redeploy Beanstalk without the storage cruft on L1? I mean, what I'm referring to specifically is not really storage cruft. It's more so like storage that does not exist. So it certainly could. Maybe Brain can chime in with, gas cost estimations. But I think there are some changes that are less feasible on L1, although I'm somewhat speculating. So, maybe I'll let one of the devs chime in.
Hey, can y'all hear me?
Yep, we can. Brain, we can hear you.
You're muted, Brain, if you're talking.
All right, we'll give Brain a second to come back. But in the meantime, so Tyler B says we added UI to create new wells, but there's still no new wells in this. No new wells in the silo. Are we doing anything to make it easier to whitelist wells in the silo? So part of the Beanstalk 3 initiative is whitelist v1.1. Again, I'll open it up. Breen's typing, but I'll open it up while he's typing to Guy or anyone else who wants to talk about that whitelisting process and how v1.1 will make that easier or change that process.
Well, unlike deploying wells, whitelisting an asset in the silo requires a DAO vote. So, there will never be any sort of, one click whitelist, if you will. But yeah, I mean, the existing process is off-chain voting. Generally people open some sort of discussion channel, and due to this new whitelist upgrade that I believe is part of Beanstalk 3, it'll be quite simple from a development perspective to whitelist a new asset. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine having some sort of UI given the current, construction of needing some sort of vote and all of that voting being off chain. I'm not totally clear on if snapshot you can create snapshot proposals programmatically, but perhaps you can. Maybe that's something to look into. But I feel like before getting to those steps, it's probably worth, just discussing in Discord what people are interested in whitelisting and the optimal LP BDV distribution to set for that particular whitelisted token, et cetera, et cetera. And if there's traction, then it makes sense to talk about what it would look like to develop it. That's my 2 cents.
Appreciate it, Guy. And we've got Breen, Nasdaq, and Tyler typing. So Nasdaq asks, are we concerned about liquidity on L2s? I guess to put my 2 cents in about the L2 liquidity question. I mean, that is an ongoing discussion, and I think there is some concern, and I think a lot of that comes down to what L2 is chosen as well. I guess the other thing I'll mention about L2s is Vitalik had, I guess he had just it might have been a quick post even just this morning about future use of L2s and their utility. So, I mean, for what it's worth, what goes through my mind is there's certainly a lot of potential focus or a lot of discussion around L2s right now, really throughout the ETH community. So usually that bodes well for things like liquidity. But right now, obviously the market's in a bit of an upheaval anyways. But yeah, a couple folks still typing. So Mixolydian writes, so the move to L2 becomes more of a requirement with Beanstalk 3 due to the added gas costs introduced by Secure Beanstalk. So that's a question if those two concepts are related. The increased gas costs related to Secure Beanstalk necessitates use of an L2, at least to make it practical. And continues to write, I wonder if there's such a way to do Secure Beanstalk without adding gas costs, e.g. static analysis. And for what it's worth, I mean, looking at what Breen wrote as a reply to Mixolydian's earlier comments. So Breen wrote, certainly possible to do so. So this is about redeploying Beanstalk without the storage cruft. So Breen responded, it's certainly possible to do so, but the security additions added to Beanstalk 3 plus the storage refractor significantly increases the gas needed per interaction with Beanstalk, even without the storage cruft. So to get back to Mixolydian's question, so really, I guess this is a question for the developers. So was or is the potential move to an L2, is that being driven by the additional gas costs related to Secure Beanstalk, or something completely different, or was that primary objective to manage some of those increasing gas costs, or something else?
I mean, in my opinion, it's definitely related. I wouldn't be the best person to tell you the exact gas cost increases as a result of Secure Beanstalk. But I mean, as someone who used Beanstalk, particularly leading up to the exploit, or even November, a few months after it launched, it wasn't cheap.
It's absolutely true. Okay, Tyler has one more. One more question here. So, one more question regarding the field and pods. Currently, the field is not very relevant to peg maintenance. There's just too much debt. After Beanstalk 3, are we planning to revisit pods to make them more relevant again? So to just give my perspective real quick, I'm not aware of anything specific post Beanstalk 3 that's directly related to the pod system, or to the field system.
I don't know what it would mean necessarily to make them more relevant again. I mean, there was that temp check a while ago where the DAO, or stockholders at least, expressed some interest in restructuring the debt in some capacity. If you're asking me, I don't know how good of an idea that is necessarily. And, it's hard to know. It's like the people who voted on that proposal, hard to know how much skin in the game they have in the field. Even if they do, it's like, there are obviously lots of very reasonable counter arguments to the proposal in the form of, you're basically, Beanstalk would be going back on the terms it gave out to lenders, which isn't great. So yeah, maybe those are just some shower thoughts in response to the question.
So Sophocles wrote in the chat, just joining in where we're currently at with forward outlook after Beanstalk 3. Maybe it was touched on the beginning, and you're right, Sophocles. It was talked a little bit about earlier on. It sounds like there are a handful of potential items, specifically around things like on-chain governance. Yeah, and a handful of other potential items that the dev team's going to look at. All right, looks like the chat for the meeting we're down to the bottom of the chat, I should say, and doesn't look like there's anything in the Barnyard chat right now. Open it up for just another minute to give anybody else an opportunity to ask any questions or bring up any items. Okay, seeing and hearing nothing. Appreciate everybody's time as always. So we'll take the recording and we will post it to Discord. We'll also put it out on Twitter, as well as the info deck for the meeting. And yeah, we'll see everybody around the farm. Oh, Nasdaq, thank you. Appreciate it. And Tyler, thank you. All right, thanks everybody.
Rex.
Have a good day.
Thanks.